Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Allahumma alimna ma yanfa'una wa anfa'na bima. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa zidna ilman. Allahumma irna al-haqqa haqqan warzuqna itba'a wa irna al-batila batilan warzuqna ijtinaba. Allahumma ighfir lana warhamna wa anta khairur rahimin. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa ashabihi wa atba'ihi ajma'in. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ameen. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Welcome to another gathering of reading sections from the Risale Nur, or the Epistles of Light in English. We're continuing our discussion this week with the second station of the 13th word that we started last week. Briefly speaking, this was a section that came after a rich and long discussion around understanding or viewing the Quran in the light of a verse that talks about sending the Quran as healing and mercy. This particular section is very much focused on the reality or the certainty of death as being what I understand as the impetus or sort of the beginning of all sorts of questioning and focus. Like, if, and I tried this at times, if in any conversation when you're having with people, friends, family, sooner or later, if you bring in the topic of, like, let's say like this author does, the grave, and he says that the grave is there and no one can deny it. As important and as serious and as certain as the matter is, it does solicit many different reactions. And the three reactions that the author has shared with us, and he says that there are only three, and we can also all discuss whether we do find other ways of understanding this certain fact, is that there are three ways. One in which there will be someone who obviously believes in, and I mean, the evidence for death is obviously self-evident. You don't need to prove it to anybody. Everybody knows this, regardless of their worldviews. But there'll be one who will see death as or the grave, as the author says, as a door to another world, so another type of existence, a continuous existence. This third way is someone who would completely deny it, or completely see this as the end of everything that they experience of themselves, their consciousness, obviously the physical world, but also their feelings and so forth. And then there's a second way in which perhaps someone will not deny their feelings for, or their desire for continued existence, and may be able to, will not be able to deny it, but at the same time is not able to confirm it in a way in which it makes that experience one of joy, or let's say, joy is a strong word to say, but one of, instead it still brings them pain, and they're worried, it still brings them worry and pain and so forth. So we were discussing these three ways, and the main conclusion from the first page that we had discussed was that the weight of this question is very significant. It is on top of all of us, all human experiences. None of them can deny this. Yet, the issue of trying to solve for this is something that can leave someone uneasy and sort of stuck. So the question and the problem is highly certain, but what to do with it is the discussion that we are having or continuing this week also. If there were any thoughts that people had from last week or lingering or came up and want to bring them up now, they're welcome to do so. Otherwise, we will continue reading from the second page up on the top of the page. So the certain fact of death then can only be approached in these three ways. And 124,000 veracious messengers, the prophets in whose hands are miracles as signs of confirmation, have announced that the three ways are as described above. And relying on their illuminations and visions, 124 million saints have confirmed and set their signatures on the prophet's tidings. And innumerable exact scholars have proved it rationally with their categorical proofs at the level of certainty at the degree of knowledge. And the text that we're reading is also regarding, the author is also regarding this text as part of this, you could say, body of proofs. They have all unanimously declared it to be a 99% certain probability, saying the only way to be saved from extinction and eternal imprisonment and be directed towards eternal happiness is through belief in God and obedience to Him. If a person considers but does not heed the word of a single messenger, not to take a dangerous road on which there is a 1% danger of perishing, and takes it, the anxiety at perishing he suffers will destroy even his appetite for food. Thus, hundreds of thousands of veracious and verified messengers announced that there is a 100% probability that misguidance and vice lead to the gallows of the grave, ever before the eyes, and eternal solitary confinement, and that there is a 100% probability that belief and worship remove those gallows, close the solitary prison, and transform the ever apparent grave into a door opening onto an everlasting treasury and palace of felicity. And they have pointed out signs and traces of these. Confronted as he is then with the strange, awesome, terrifying matter, if wretched man, especially if he is a Muslim, does not believe in worship, is he able to banish the grievous pain arising from the anxiety he suffers as he all the time awaits his turn to be summoned to those gallows, ever present before his eyes, even if he is given rule over the whole world together with all its pleasures? I ask you. So I'll take a pause here and for my purposes, just highlight things that caught my attention when I was reading. The first thing is obviously what caught my attention is obviously these numbers that the author presents, and so 124,000 veracious messengers, 24 million saints, or 124 million saints, and like innumerable exact scholars. And I was thinking to myself, am I going to, okay, so before coming to this, we are certain of this fact of death. The problem is self-evident, between our desire for continued existence, we can also call this eternity, but things not to end. Our desire, our sense of happiness, our sense of love, all our senses, our desires as humans, and also, I guess, primarily being one of being conscious. So every morning when we wake up, one can find many reasons to be grateful or happy or like find joy in, but one of the simple ones and most obvious ones could just be the fact that you're awake and you're aware of your own self. And that seems to be the most precious and the most precious sort of feeling. And you just don't want there to be a moment in which you're not aware or conscious of your own self, and hence your surroundings. And so that desire, the idea of that ending is frightening. It's scary. It's also unfathomable. And in the face of this reality of that not ending, I was wondering, is there any number, of, let's say, people or other individuals with an experience, who have gone through it, different experiences, who have also similarly questioned this, who have similarly investigated this problem seriously and sincerely and through many different ways. Is there any number that would convince me that there must be a solution? And I thought to myself, probably not, because the fact that I'm certain of the gravity of the problem makes me want to say that at least I should be serious to search for a possible solution, and not say there's a problem, but there's no solution to it. So this paragraph initially, or with these different sort of layers of individuals, and it's just a way of saying that one should pay attention to finding a serious attention to finding a solution to this problem. And then this is one way of presenting, let's say, in human, let's say, experience in history, a presentation of a solution to consider. The other thing that sort of came to my mind as I was thinking about these different levels, so there's the levels of the prophets, there's the level of what the author terms as the saints, and then the scholars. And to me, they were representing just different ways of concluding and knowing and gathering your evidence, such that it represents, obviously, on the level of the prophets, revelation, that we've talked very extensively in the previous sections about what revelation is, and the necessity of revelation. And we can go into more detail together in doing so. The other one is obviously of one's own experience, and that is also represented in a group of individuals that the author is terming as the saints, who, through also witnessing an experience to higher degrees of that experience, or let's say that more in every class, there are students who work really hard and work with more than, let's say, some others. And so you do, based on the amount of work that everyone puts in, there is a perception that you will also have, that you will tend to trust those with their conclusions, who you've seen or have heard from others about how hard they work or how much effort they put in. And then there's the rational categorical proofs, which is, again, one that can be verified on your own, by yourself too. So there's a rational category of understanding things, let's say we call them intellectually. There's experience of represented in the saints example. And then there's revelation, the idea that the author of this universe, the one who presented me with this problem, the one who the problem in and of itself must be pointing towards something, that it is meaningful, that it is not just sort of a random problem that occurs to me one day. Like, for example, one day I worry about death and the other day I don't, and someone does and someone does doesn't, that's not really our experience. It is a universally confirmed, let's say, experience of this tension or contradiction between our desire to continue to be aware of ourselves and then being confronted with the concept of death, or some sort of end to it. And so seeing that if everything is in our own life fitting into a particular purpose, and again, it is through witnessing creation that we see things and their order and how they come into being, that should also lead us to question this feeling of this contradiction or fear or this problem, to question what is the source of this and what am I supposed to learn from this? And is this meant to torture me? Or is this meant to be just sort of a problem for the sake of a problem, which sounds very absurd and meaningless, without any way out? And so the idea that there are different ways that we can too engage ourselves to solving this problem in our lives. I'm calling it a problem, but it's obviously a sign, one that should be looked at as an object of investigation and curiosity, and also probably as a experience of, it's like seeing it as a important piece in the puzzle of our life, and seeing it as a something to be interested in with seriousness, instead of being afraid of it or avoiding the subject, which I think tends to be quite normal, that people find the question or the idea of death being somewhat unpleasant. But from this writing, I see this as a pleasant topic. Should you be invested in trying to solve this for yourself? So from the first paragraph, these were some of the points that I got, and I'm obviously some of these statements in these discussions try to unpack them a lot more. It shouldn't sound like it's some sort of idealistic solution, because there is no way for you to understand your fear of death, for example, then it's just easy to believe that there must be another life and a God who's merciful, and to take it as some sort of a good thing, or a window or a door into something else. That it shouldn't come to wanting to believe in something like this because you have, it seems like some sort of easier, ideal way out, but without any proof or confirmation within yourself. That is obviously not what is being meant by this discussion. And we're welcome to open it up should people have. Sometimes I obviously, having reading this or thinking about it over and over again, sometimes fall into my own bias of thinking, yes, belief, equals eternal happiness, and that's a solution. And it can be easy to fall into a habit instead of being very aware of the conclusion that you're making. So in this case, these messengers, or these, let's say, individuals who have in their own right represent for you the level of seriousness and work or attention that you're also paying to this problem, they claim that there's a 99% probability that this solution that they are offering is verified by each other. And it's something, I think at this moment, instead of saying, I was wondering why 99% in this paragraph. to me, it represented that it's serious to consider and investigate. It's not that you accept it on the basis of this, let's say, claim of no matter how many million people come up to you and they say that, to give a simple example, like 2 + 2 is 5, like you shouldn't believe them because there are a million people, but you should still believe them because that's your own experience, or whether it is your experience or not. So in this case, 99% to me represents that take it, consider it. There is a good reason to consider this as an option to investigate. And it is then only in the second paragraph that, so another thing that I was noticing maybe in this paragraph was that there are all these ways of knowing or verifying represented in these different forms of individuals. But that last piece of the puzzle, or that last percent, is then going to be your own conclusion. And that is going to obviously be depend on whether or not you're able to verify this yourself, as opposed to accepting it because X number of people said so. And I'm sure there are some other good examples that that can come about from this scenario. But one example that I was thinking as I was reading this one sentence, that if a person considers but does not heed the word of a single messenger, I was thinking this in an example for myself. For example, someone rides a bicycle or a car, let's say without a seatbelt or a helmet, and they will find it, if someone comes up to them and says that there's a 1% chance that, without a helmet, you will have and you have an accident, and there's a 1% chance that you will suffer a very serious injury. To me, it sounds like 1% is so less that I don't really need to worry about it. Yet, to me, the difference was made when I think about that. If a person considers, so if this person really considers that even that 1% chance could be a matter of life or death for them, that issue will still bother them when they're riding their bike. No matter how small that percent is, because they've considered it as an actual possibility and one that has serious consequences, like not like a scratch, but in this case and in this topic, we're also talking about probably not even probably, but definitely the most fundamental experience or aspect of human experience, that even that 1% is extremely heavy to be to be disregarded. So even if one considers it a little bit, that 1% becomes very important. And so in this example, the authors suggest that it is an anxiety that he will suffer and it will destroy even his appetite. And I notice this to be quite true in our experience, such that the human condition, if I were to summarize, at least in the era or the people around me or around us, I guess most of us, is that, yeah, there is definitely a persistent and apparent anxiety that we all are going through, that prevents us, which to me represents sort of an avoidance of the question of what my worldview is, especially informed by my fear or dislike of the idea of death. And that anxiety is masked by several activities that people will do, whether they work a lot or they find hobbies or they, consume things to an extent that they don't have to think about it one after the other. And it manifests in many different conditions that relate to what people call mental health these days, but it's just a general, um, um, let's say, it's more of an existential sickness that we find different reasons to say, no, it's this or that, or etc. Come up with different ways of explaining it, which don't necessarily get at the heart of the problem. And so it seems to me then that one has to be absolutely sure about their conclusion or understanding of what death means to them. And in that regard, like when I go back to the first, second, and third way, even though in the second way someone believes in the hereafter, but because they are not perhaps sure through their own ways of knowing and confirming, intellectually, experientially, confirming it through the process of confirming, let's say, something as a revelation, if all of those ways are not consistent and satisfactory, then that still leaves some percentage, which leaves some, I guess, yes, leaves someone feeling anxious and afraid and, uh, yeah, unsettled. And so perhaps of all the topics that we discuss in, not in this class, but generally in our own lives, it seems to me that the concluding or asking ourselves, what does the grave or death mean to me, and how can I be certain of confirming my worldview or conclusion about this, that there needs to be 100%, like a complete effort from our part of confirming and being satisfied in that conclusion. And it is one of those, I guess, one experience as a human being that does not afford any sort of doubt, that is not solvable or confirmable in our life. That's what I was thinking in reading about why this section starts off and just really tries to emphasize how sort of serious and stark and certain the problem is, or the issue is. And the certainty of the issue leads to one being very, let's say, serious about solving the issue. So if one does not consider perhaps how serious or certain and how apparent and how undeniable the experience is for them of the fear of death or the idea of the grave and of that experience, then perhaps their solution to it is also mirrors their lack of, I keep calling it seriousness, but I don't have another word for this. Okay. I'll take a pause if there is any comment or point that came up that I did not pay attention to, please. So just, so Aghabir Rise, I guess that is why the author says, especially a Muslim, because Muslims somehow hear this probability, we just said in text, even if it is 1%, some people do not even hear. Yeah, I think that point comes later, and I was thinking about the same, about especially if he's a Muslim, in the sense that for something to be so comprehensive, like as I am perceiving from this evidence that, okay, of these different levels of knowing and verifying and coming to 100% sort of, let's say, certainty, definitely indicates a level of comprehensiveness that leaves no gaps. And if in our claim, or if someone verifies the claims according to the author and what we are also trying to investigate, that Islam or revelation or this tradition is making. And if someone is not finding a satisfactory method for answering that tension for them, then definitely he will suffer sort of pain, because he has to find something comprehensive. And so if he cannot find it in this tradition, then according to this claim, he will not be able to find it anywhere else. But that also thank you for sharing that. Brother Ali, you can go ahead.
Thank you. And I would like to touch upon some points in the text as an addition to your explanations, comments. The first point is, I would like to touch about the miracles of the prophets. So signs of the confirmation, miracles, as signs of the confirmation. We usually understand miracles in terms of physical approval from the Creator by changing the order of the universe, demonstrating that only the one who established the order of the universe can change this order at a demand of the prophet who claims to be his representative, to be conveying his message. So the creator of the universe changed the order for a temporary pace at the demand of the prophet as a sign that he is confirming, the creator is confirming this person's claim to be appointed by him. That is what generally understood, although the miracles may not be interpreted in the common understanding of the believers, but as a physical appearance of extraordinary, supernatural happenings, they call it. Well, this interpretation of the miracle is important to bear in mind. It's a confirmation of the Creator of the claim of the prophet to be his employee. But another very important understanding of miracles of the prophet is the message they bring and present to human beings. The content of the message explains in a miraculous way that any human capacity can reach out to get it. We cannot reach out to get an idea which goes beyond the limits of the universe. Our reasoning cannot find out any evidence, any sign outside of the universe or referring something to not the universe, but something else. That is why the philosophy has to suffer to try to find out the answer within the universe, because they rely on their minds. That is quite human. But if it is legitimate to rely on one's mind rather than taking notice of the message and studying the message and seeing whether it is rationally acceptable, because the message that the prophets bring usually demonstrates the evidence in the creation, and it points to the source of existence of that creation. So human mind only concentrate on the matter and what is appearing in the creation, in the matter. And seeing it within the conditions of the universe. That is why we have to look. For example, there is no prophet now claiming that he is employed by the Creator. As far as I am concerned now, I have to look at the content of the message, try to see the miraculous explanation within this text, basing its argument on the evidence in the universe, but trying to see the meaning referring to its source of existence. Then it makes sense, as we understand when we look at anything made in this world, we definitely know that there is a source of existence of the thing, as we see it in the, for example, a book, the meaning, an art, anything, a technology, the knowledge of the engineer, its engineer, a piece of art, the quality of the artistry of the artist, etc. Using the same analogy, looking at the universe and seeing the meaning. That is what we should understand now, and concentrate on the miraculous explanation within the text of the messengers. In our conditions, we can say within the Quran. Now, you can also say within the Bible, Torah, etc., because they claim to be the word of the creator of the universe, nothing to do anything, any piece of this universe. So we have to search which one really gives a precise message that I can confirm. We have to look for it. That is one point I would like to share with you. Another point. The problem of this age is, or it is really changing very rapidly. Before, 400 years before, prior to this 400 years, in the world, there were two poles of cultures. One is Western, as it is called, understanding. The other one is Eastern. Again, it's a generalization, religion-based, the prophetic message-based understanding. So prophetic message-based understanding started fading away because of this misrepresentation of Islam or the religion by the followers of the religion, reducing it to only imitation of the previous informations developed by the previous scholars, not updating them, not renewing them according to the capacity of the new generations. So it became a scholastic period, which is just based on, as far as the belief is concerned, based on general acceptance of what the religious authorities say, and there were no competing group or thinking in the society. So in the Western world, what it developed now, a scientific, a kind of revelation, revolution, change, and people started investigating the universe and challenging the religious sources. The believer's side, especially what is expected from the once upon a time wondrous civilization owners, Muslims, were fading away under the rulings, the politicians of their administrators, and reducing religion and belief in imitation. Now, what happened? The matter became in the minds of the people, and those the priority the matter took the priority, and everything is going to be explained, they thought, through studying the matter and benefiting from the matter, the word, and utilizing it for human benefits, human usage. Later on, it is challenged, and let's come closer to 20th century. In the 20th century, people, or the 19th and 20th century, materialistic interpretation of the word overwhelmingly took over and denied the spiritual side of human race. Now, towards the very end of our days, it means really beginning of the millennium, 2000 years, and the people started questioning that we cannot really deny human feelings. So what happened now? There were already certain currents and philosophical arguments that human spirituality, human senses are really important, but these human senses must be taken within this universe and try to be convinced within this universe, satisfied within this universe. Nowadays, this current is taking over everything. Religion is thrown into the trash can, and trying to follow only humans, denying the human spirituality is also thrown away, and now they are acknowledging the human feelings. What is the solution they are offering to us is very simple. Look at your feelings, take them as your guide, and try to satisfy them within this universe as much as you can benefit and enjoy it until you die. Nowadays, this is the prevalent appearance of the civilization. Don't deny your feelings, follow it, but try to satisfy it within this universe. Millions, if not billions of people are following this tradition of thinking. How can I satisfy my feelings without denying them? And what are the means of it? The market is full of suggestions. Do this, you will be happy, your health care, etc. Your feelings, try to understand yourself, believe in yourself, follow your own feelings. You will get it, you will succeed, but never pay attention to the eternal desire of these feelings. Deny it, although it is the fact, they know, but they say this is just an assumed, learned from others. It is not human nature, requires that they should really look for a solution as far as the desire, the infinite desire, eternal desire of human feelings satisfaction. Now, we have to be very careful. How about the believers? What are they doing nowadays? Are they presenting an answer to this current? Not at all. They are still repeating what our belief requires without presenting any evidence. It means majority of the followers of the Quran and the Bible and the Torah, majority of them don't study these sources. Especially the Quran presents many examples that were driven from or taken from the creation, and asking people, think about the source of existence of these acts that you are experiencing, he must be the absolute being. So don't deny the eternal satisfaction of your feelings, the desire for the eternal satisfaction of your feelings, but trust it, base it on the source of their existence. Who created the desire for an eternal satisfaction in yourself? It is not learned, it is cultured, it is in your creation, which is called nowadays natural. It is within your, if you like, manufacturer's setting. So find out the manufacturer, and you will find that if the manufacturer has put this need within you, it will definitely satisfy it. This process is heavily utilized in the book that we are reading here. The author is very conscious of this reality, that we have to look for the source of existence of our desires, our feelings, and see the wisdom in their creation, whether this source of existence can satisfy it or not. Look at the universe. That's what the Quran suggests us. The Quran is full of explanations of the hereafter. Unfortunately, because of the imitation of the previously accepted, imitatively accepted belief, belief is taken for granted. We believe in the Quran. We believe in the hereafter. Why? Quran says so. Why? Because Quran is our book, sacred book. That's a very simplistic presentation of the belief in the hereafter and trying to tie the satisfaction to the creator of this universe, who must be an absolute being. And making rational explanations as this book does, the author does, not in this section, but we read 10th word. It is an extensive demonstration of the physical evidence in the creation, demonstrating that the creator of the universe must definitely satisfy our desire for eternal needs, eternal satisfaction. So see it in his term. He presents it in many places, not only the piece we studied, in other places as well, because this is the crucial point. That is why we should understand that believers in the Quran, unfortunately, are not paying attention to the real teaching of the Quran, but accepting it as it is as a result of their imitative confirmation of the Quran as to be the word of God, but not really studying the content of it, and also not being able to leave behind this imitative belief. It means inherited cultural or ancestral culture, national identity. We are Muslims. These slogans killed human minds and made them not think and question how the Quran teaches. That is why we understand that the Muslims also are having trouble to prove, to confirm rationally why we should believe in the hereafter as related to its creator, the source of their existence, the existence of the feelings that he can satisfy. These three main points attracted my attention as an extension to Farah's explanations, comments. Whatever she mentioned, I just discarded them. That is already told. These are the points I would like to share with you. Thank you very much for your patience for my very long and boring talk. Thank you.
Jazakallah, no, those were different points and important to highlight. I'll just briefly mention them as way of reminding myself, but also summary. The first one being that the need, confronted with the contradiction or tension of having a desire for continuing to exist, but then also being confronted with this idea of death. This is not something that is solved from evidence, let's say, within this universe alone. And it is in this moment that you shared the idea of what one should understand from the concept of miracle, which traditionally can come to mean some sort of physical act, but for our purposes, the miracle for us is that we alone as human beings, just from our experience within this world, cannot satisfactorily, or let's say, get to 100% confirmation of how to solve the riddle of our life. And in that moment, something as revelation, something that comes to us by the maker of this universe to address this contradiction, is necessary to confirm and to move something into a level of certainty that cannot be achieved by purely investigating and reasoning within the conditions of the universe alone. So that the miracle being that we cannot alone answer completely and satisfactorily this issue. The other thing that you were mentioning had to do with the current condition being that, okay, we recognize that there are human feelings that are unexplainable by, just purely some chemical or biological processes. We don't necessarily understand them completely, and they do exist, but in order to address them has become this, again, a solution that is limited to the universe itself. And so feelings that are, abstract, that are also, their symptoms are felt physically, but they themselves do not have to do with, necessarily have to do with our physical experience as causes, are being satisfied through consumption or material, or only thought about in physical ways. So it is a, let's say, misappropriation of a human being and its feelings in this particular environment. There were other things that were coming to my mind around. So the last point that you shared about the tendency of, let's say, a person who looks at their religious identity as one of, social and a social political identity. The consequence of something like that, I was thinking, was that if someone does, represent an understanding of human existence in imitative ways, let's say, without coming to a rational conclusion, and also one confirmed by their own experience, something that they've gone through themselves, then what happens as a result is their inability to present it convincingly to others, which is important from a sense of that if something, like if this is the biggest problem that we know of for humanity, then it seems to be the right of every human being to be aware of a way of addressing this. And so if, let's say, I am aware of, let's say, a good solution to a particular problem I'm facing, then I am responsible to present it to others so that they may also benefit from it. Yet, I guess the issue in this taking on religious belief as in social identity prevents one from presenting it in a way that is convincing and actually solves a problem. And that was one consequence I was thinking, because otherwise, I personally find it sometimes challenging that in engaging, generally speaking, with people who are not interested in rational proofs for something that they claim to be certain for themselves, which is, or they have other methods of convincing themselves, whether it is imitative, whether it is their feelings or something that they are not able to express. So not everybody comes to the conclusion through the rational method, but for, I guess, our purposes, people in this group find it very necessary that coming to that conclusion rationally is extremely important, and the process is incomplete without it. So okay, that was, it's an ongoing debate and question in my head of how to highlight the importance of rationally being convinced of what what belief can means to one's life, and also what is the significance of the hereafter and so forth. The other point that I was thinking of is this idea in this wake of, I guess, wanting to address spirituality, but at the same time limiting it within the universe, is this idea that people can also, and it is popular in the West, where people will believe or want to believe in the idea of a continued existence, but one that continues within the universe. So this idea of a cyclical life, that you die and then you come back to life, and it just keeps on going. And so there is no questioning of a continuity in another, but not within the conditions of this universe. And that seems to be also appealing to people in one aspect, but it does not point towards any absolute willpower or creatorship that is the cause of the constant life and death. Anyway, I don't want to confuse anybody because it's unclear, but we can move on. If there is any other comment, we're almost towards the end of the session, and I will probably just read this last part. It connects with the rest of it, and we can see where to start from next week. So, since old age, illness, disaster, and on all sides death open up the frightful pain, and are a reminder, even if the people of misguidance and vice enjoy 100,000 pleasures and delights, they most certainly experience a sort of hell in their hearts, but a profound stupor of heedlessness temporarily makes them insensible to it. In this regard, there's also, obviously, if you're going to constantly numb your feelings, again, this idea that Brother Ali was mentioning about satisfying human feelings, but through material means, is a sort of numbing that because it's not satisfying your human feelings. It's just sort of drugging them so that they don't speak, such that, let's say, someone experiences some sort of bodily pain, like in taking a painkiller, only numbs your experience of the pain, but does not obviously solves any root cause of it. And as long as one is numbing this by constantly trying to satisfy their feelings through physical pleasure, that uncomfort, pain does not leave them. And there's a example I've heard in these sessions before, and I'll sort of formulate it in, like, for example, the idea that, you know, you could be given $1 million, but only, like, let's say 5 hours to spend it. It sounds like a very torturing experience, one that will be definitely riddled with anxiety and frustration and panic and so forth. So even though the idea that something can have, like some sort of idea that you can experience all sorts of pleasures in this world, but the fact that all of it in those pleasures of this world is this idea that it does not satisfy your human consciousness, which is in need of something that is not of the nature of this universe, is a torture in and of itself. So I will pause here and probably just end on this note that I think so far, one of the things that I walk away with after this session does have to do with recognizing that the nature of human consciousness and that the experience, that the desire of human consciousness is not of the nature of this world. And so no matter how you try to satisfy it, will perpetuate your pain and anxiety and worries. And so it is then a sign or an impetus to look at any claim for our purposes that claims to provide an answer not of the nature of this universe or and one that fits the nature of your consciousness.